We've got with us on the phone right now Michael Chertoff, of course, the former head of Homeland Security for the United States of America. Secretary Chertoff, help us get a little context and perspective on this. Can you remember a major American city receiving a shelter-in-place order?
I can't. Obviously, this is an extraordinary event because you have a terrorist moving around in a large area, obviously very dangerous. And I think that it's appropriate to tell people to shelter in place, but it is something that's very unusual.
Well, at the same time, here are the questions. I mean, here are the questions at play since the double bombing at the Boston Marathon finish line. We have two gentlemen who showed up with black bags and blew up an area at the finish line, maimed dozens and dozens and dozens of people, murdered people, hid until their pictures were flashed all over TV screens and newspapers and computer screens across the country, made a break for it, murdered an MIT police officer at point-blank range, carjacked someone, robbed a 7-Eleven, threw bombs out of their cars, and one of them, after he was killed in the chaos, possibly by his own brother driving over his body, we don't know yet exactly how he died, discovered with an IED attached to his body. We have an unprecedented situation where law enforcement authorities, Michael Chertoff, have no choice but to try and figure out how to contain this suspect. And at the same time, I'm sure you're thinking this is the international platform that a terrorist would be asking for.
Well, that's exactly right. And of course, as you may have discussed already, there's a long history of Chechnya being a source of terrorist activity. Most of that was directed within Russia, and of course, there's some notorious cases where a lot of innocent people were killed. Another feature, though, of what's gone on in Chechnya over the last 10, 15, 20 years is that it's actually exported terrorism, and there were Europeans who went to Chechnya to fight on behalf of the separatists, and then came back and became extremists and terrorists in their home countries. So you've obviously got some folks here who have some training and are prepared to really do whatever they need to do to carry out their mission. Reminds me a little bit of what happened in Mumbai in 2008, where you had terrorists who moved around the city of Mumbai, killing and bombing until finally they were contained and killed.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much we can confirm about the Chechen connection, but I think of the history of the atrocities that have happened in Chechnya, and even reporter Anna Politkovskaya, who was killed at point-blank range, who was caught in the middle of that, just reporting on it. But if there is a connection, it is just a whole new world as it comes to Boston. We don't know yet too much about that. We're just finding out, Willie, the names, the ages, and the connections that these two brothers had to Cambridge and potentially to other countries.
All we know so far, according to Pete Williams, is that the suspect was born in Kyrgyzstan. His brother, who was killed last night alongside him, was born in Russia. They became legal permanent residents of the United States in 2007. Mr. Chertoff, back to the urgent matter at hand, though. What does it tell you that the city of Boston now has been locked down? It looked like the focus of the investigation, of the pursuit, was in Watertown, but when you lock down now the entire metropolitan area, essentially, of Boston, leave open the question of whether or not he is not inside Watertown, but could be anywhere, frankly, in the area.
Well, I think that's exactly right. I mean, obviously, this whole stage of the process began with a carjacking and moving it from Cambridge into Watertown, and that suggests that part of the MO here is going to be for this individual to keep on the move. And unless he finds a place to hide out. So it may be some time before the police can actually localize where he is. And I think they're wise to take the precaution of making sure that everybody is staying inside and sheltering in place, because he could be looking to grab a car and move someplace else.
And the question also is cooperation with others. I'm not sure what Alex just said in my ear. Say it again, Alex. The question also, though, Michael Chertoff, is where they lived. What is there? What is the danger there? They're also dealing with devices that they've strewn across their path between Cambridge and Watertown. There's so many hotspots that could be connected with these guys, and, possibly not ruling out the fact that they may know other people who have conspired with them.
Well, Mika, that's exactly right. And I think if you think about what the authorities are doing right now, is they're doing a number of different things. First, they're trying to secure any place that these individuals might might have been connected to, where they might have devices or components of devices to make sure there's nothing out there that might blow up. That's similar to what we saw, in Aurora when there was the individual who had booby-trapped his apartment. They're also going to be looking to see what connections do these people have. This is similar to what we did right after 9/11. The first thing you do when you have an identity is look to see, is there a network out there? Are there other people who might be either planning to do something or supporting these people? So the police are doing that as well. Finally, they're trying to figure out where might this individual go, someplace he has a connection to that might be a refuge. So simultaneously, with actually hunting physically, they're looking to build a construct of the entire network of these two individuals as quickly as they can.
Really?
Michael, can you remember a time, whether when you were Homeland Security Chief or before or after, when you had to consider the possibility, at least, of locking down an American city?
The closest I have to say is September 11th. I mean, I was head of the criminal division then, and we, of course, were very concerned about follow-on attacks after the initial attacks that we experienced that morning. And one of the concerns was, were there going to be attacks on the ground in places like Washington? So we had to consider what would we do if we had a sign that there was someone actually on the ground acting out as a terrorist. Now, obviously, the scale of 9/11 was much greater, and happily there weren't any follow-on attacks on the ground. But certainly this is a familiar experience to me.
It's just remarkable. It's remarkable what we've seen, and it's been escalated by police now, not just asking the residents of those 6 or 7 towns in the western part just outside of Boston to stay in their homes, but now the entire city of Boston staying in their homes with doors locked. What would you expect from here, the kind of coordination to be going forward, Michael? What's the next move in this investigation?
Well, Willie, first let me say what you are seeing here, notwithstanding the terrible tragedy that launched this and has continued, is essentially the harvesting of the investment in training and coordination and cooperation that's occurred over the last 10 years. You see it in terms of the ability to get the video and use it and deploy it right away. You see it in the cooperation between federal, state, and local authorities. So this is all a sign that what has really yielded returns. What I think is going to happen next, as I say, is they're going to try to map the entire network. Figure out where these guys came from, specifically, were they trained, what are the connections overseas, is there someone guiding this or encouraging this from overseas, and even more urgently, are there other people that they are connected to in Boston or in the United States that ought to be looked at very carefully because they might be part of something as well.
So listening to you talk about what needs to be done, Secretary Chertoff, this could last quite some time.
Well, I think there'll be a couple of stages. Obviously, one stage will be when they apprehend this last brother. I mean, that's the most urgent task. But I would envision that there'll be quite a bit of follow-on investigation, as there was after 9/11, where they'll map every single connection and link these individuals had to see if there are others out there who might have been part of this plan or who might be planning to follow up. And that will be, obviously, it won't be a lockdown situation, hopefully. It'll be a more measured situation. But, this is the kind of thing where you've got to make sure you've got every potential connection out there that could be dangerous. You can't just assume once you've eliminated the second individual, your job is done.
Former Secretary of Homeland Security Michael Chertoff, we really appreciate your perspective this morning. Hope to check